Live and direct, live and I take no jive.
Legalize it.
So how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, "Great, Barry, a reefer."
Welcome back. It's another episode of the Koala podcast. And on this episode, we're going to Spain. I've not been to Spain before. And I'm talking to Kirsten Velasco, who, of course, I came across on the dreaded LinkedIn. And Kirsten was interesting because she'd written a Cannabis Basics Textbook, have moved from the Midwest to Spain, and is also now working in other areas of cannabis. So I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation to see what she's doing, why she's doing it, and why she's chosen such a great country to do it in. Kirsten, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking out time to join me on the Karma Koala. Maybe first, first question I always ask people is, and the trajectory is normally fairly similar. What brought you towards working in cannabis, and what was your work career before that?
Thanks for having me. I feel obligated to say that's part of the format.
Yeah.
The trajectory of my lead up to being where I'm at with cannabis is that lifelong consumer. Started consuming when I was 13, 1978, a very good year, as you mentioned. And I then, as the years went by and I was trying to keep this clandestine, you're hiding in your bathroom and it's just so shame inducing. Then my niece, who had chronic illness, said, "Hey, I've been trying to advocate for medical cannabis in Illinois." And somebody in the legislative branch, oopsie daisy, voted the wrong way. And we now have medical cannabis. And I was like, Illinois did what? Because, we sort of at that time were like, A, legalization is never going to happen. And B, we were more like Indiana, where we have so much fun locking people up. Why would we give that up and have any access? Because I read the law and saw the structure of it and how it was built perfectly for the oligarchy.
As always.
That I was like, the attitude really is, if you build it, they will come, like the movie Field of Dreams. And I said to myself, this is a highly reviled substance. The propaganda has been wildly effective. And even I was ashamed of my usage and hadn't studied it to find out if I was going to die of cancer from it. So when I started studying it, it was the exact opposite of everything I ever believed about it. And I thought, no one is going to register with the government and get fingerprinted in order to get access, this crazy process, and then physically take themselves into a building to go get their little secret baggie of weed. So the impediments were felt and looked insurmountable from a practical perspective. And yet all these millions of dollars, and we're talking about multi-$1,000 just to apply for a license that would then be in a lottery and kind of quasi-judged. So all of this from the outside terrified me, but because of the Kirsten's Crusader was totally triggered, I'm on a mission. I was like, I'll connect with the community. I'll go out, look at me. I'm the least threatening person you're ever going to run into. And I studied public speaking and, how to message and story and really build some content. Went to Toastmasters, learned how to do public speaking, and then decided, hey, I'll just go to my public library. And lo and behold, I was getting invitations to come out and speak all over the place. Doctors, healthcare professionals, managed care facilities. So even though, I'm from Illinois and I did grow up in a super rural area, Chicago was only 2.5 hours away, and I had moved up in that area, in that suburban area. And I was in the primordial goo that fostered all of these massive MSOs. Curaleaf, the biggest one in the world over in Europe.
Don't start me on Curaleaf. They're not one of my favorite topics.
Oh, we can talk about it. So anyway, do you see how like the crusade of knowing that people who were in dire medical need. Those are the shoulders of the people who we have to thank for having access to medical and recreational or adult use now. And that is just such a visceral effect for me that I was like, this can't be the way that we do this. We have to take this load off of them so that they can then spend $400 a month minimum at these dispensaries, just trying to find a safer alternative to all of the medical care and pharmaceuticals that they had already tried and either been unsuccessful or it made them in worse condition.
So did that lead you to write the book Cannabis Basics Textbook? I mean, for me, one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you is because you've written that, and everybody's talking about cannabis education. And I have a column on my site that I just always, I try and search out stories about a whole range of topics, and I'm always looking. And I notice everybody's talking about education, but there's very little of it. Like you went back to, we go back to this, your comment about the oligarchy, but there's a monopoly in education at the moment, if you call it that, in the US. And anybody who seems to get a little bit of success in it turns it very quickly into a slightly exploitative business that really takes money off people who don't have much money and isn't teaching them very much. I'm really interested in this topic of education because I really think it's severely lacking at the moment in the US and worldwide. It's either controlled by tertiary institutions or private companies, but there's for instance, I look across all the community colleges in the US and they've been talking about it for years, but there isn't a standardized course that isn't based on the mighty dollar that helps young people understand cannabis in the most basic format. And I wanted to ask you, firstly, obviously what you did meant that you wanted to write something and help people, but have you found in this space that education is just being cruelly ignored?
Absolutely. Like you're throwing gas on my fire and it doesn't need it. So at the same time that I was doing all this outreach, I was also a board member of Illinois Women in Cannabis. And their focus was like, let's bring women in and make sure that they have a seat at the table or who I can contribute professionally. So it was a huge networking organization. And they were closely connected to these original MSOs that started in Chicago and Illinois. And I'm like, this is great. The way that we can bring in more people is instead of me just being a drop in the ocean of, oh, I went out and I gave a public presentation about the medical cannabis program. Let's have these people who want to be part of the organization do advocacy and bring their professionalism. If they want to go out into their community, they can do education. So we called this the Cannabis Education Campaign. But the funding and the content tends to be a barrier. And what I saw in my 5 years was it was like a sorority throwing parties for the fraternity, the sponsors. I know. I don't
go to, you see, I just don't go to conference, any of these sort of things. It just reminds me of that every time. And everybody's just patting each other on the back and telling each other how well they've done. And somebody gets a couple of gold stars, and it's self-serving prophecy of whatever, basically.
And there's a lot of bemoaning of the same issues. Oh, look at the impediments. This is what we're up against. And yeah, like you've got to participate. Your network is your net worth. So I did that for 5 years with Illinois Women in Cannabis, trying to explain to them, this is how you build memberships. This is how you build awareness for your organizations. And because they were comfortable with the pattern of we throw a party and these guys sponsor it, I was like, let me do that. I'll go out. I have a network, the statewide, and I did like 11 events, littler events out in all of Illinois. And it was a lot of work, but it fit what they were comfortable with. Okay. And at the same time, and there's a lot of other things, because I would love to get into the different facets and caveats that you've experienced in cannabis. At the same time, I was inventing my invention that protects vapes. But I was like, hey, let's, reach out into the community. And then 2020 hit and all of my programs canceled. So I said, well, I've been creating content for other people who are trying to start their own businesses. I will provide a book. I'll self-publish on Amazon. And then I was able to really distill down what was important, and also recognize that I might know what THCA is, or the flavonoids, or the plant, why are our plants purple, and all the terpenes, and understand what they do. But what you can get a person to comprehend and ingest in a usable way is very small. Everybody's fighting for attention. It used to be, oh, I'm going to get a website. And that was the only website on the whole internet. So it got a lot of attention. And now that's the opposite. Now it's all a cacophony. So that's why I distilled down and said, hey, somebody could sit on their toilet and read this book. And it really takes them from where I was hiding in the bathroom trying to do one-hitters, or not knowing anything at all, and saying, oh, wow, this wasn't what we thought. And here is a practical guide how to incorporate it as a one thing in a big basket of your personal choices about your own healthcare management. So that's how I make the idea of cannabis as a health tool much more digestible, is by pointing out, hey, you're going to meditate. If you're not into meditation, maybe you like yoga, or maybe you like to just add some vitamins to your day. These are your personal ways of customizing what you do to optimize how you feel through the day. So imagine your basket. So do you see how I feel as though when somebody picks up my book, it's not a tome, which I'm very proud of somebody who is so committed to it that they've put everything they could ever possibly know about cannabis into one book. But for me, I was more, again, about the crusade and the mission, and saying, hey, let's just give what people really, really need to know.
Well,
and
the old less is more, basically.
Totally. And as for a practical matter, even if somebody's like, hey, I'd like to work in cannabis, I think I see the benefit and the opportunity to have a new job in this profession. You could read this book and be super capable of interacting with people on the same level of saying, I know what you need to know, and I need to know how to listen to what you have to say in order to then.
Yeah, because like anything, this industry, there's a lot of people who start talking in jargon, and that jargon is designed to leave other people out of the game. I hate jargon with a passion. So whenever people jargon me, I just pretend I'm the dimmest person on the planet, and I have no idea what they're talking about. I think it's really important, because the idea of education and cannabis is meant to be a different sort of industry sector. And all this talk about being inclusive, but a lot of times people are using language to exclude others so they can give themselves a bigger role in whatever it is they perceive they're doing.
In my experience, I did get pulled in by a couple community colleges who had been awarded grants to create education programs, and I would not get, I contributed on their meetings for, how are we going to create this curriculum? But they didn't really like my approach, was to bluntly tell them, do not make this forced into a standard semester class procedure. You're forcing this industry and topic into your outdated pattern at colleges and community college. We have YouTube. People do not need to go to college. They're only there to pay your bills.
Exactly.
And get a worthless piece of paper. Now, it might be worth something. It could, separate them from a massive crowd. But they really, I said, come on, just like make it like you come in for 2 hours at a time and you learn a different topic and you learn what's most important as an advantage. And then you take that and find out what your particular interests are. Because, just like cannabis in any other industry, you can bring marketing to it. You can bring healthcare to it. You can bring growing and science and lab work and retail. So you have to find where your passion is in cannabis and then dig into that to really make yourself professional in your field. And, that education pattern is just tired as hell.
What about the public library system in the US? Did you try and attempt to engage with the public library system? And if so, what sort of reaction did you get? Because I mean, they're under a lot of pressure anyway, not to put anything on the shelves that scares people who don't want to learn anything. But at the same time, I've been dealing with librarians all my life. They sometimes don't jump out and put themselves on the line on certain things. But
I am so happy that you asked me about this, because when my kids are little, they're 27 and 23 right now. When my kids were little, the library was everything to us. It was just such a great place. And then after a while, when the kids were in school, I was like, God, I haven't been to a library in ages, right? And you forget that it's even a thing. Well, when I started with Toastmasters and saw someone else offering a program that could be booked at a library, I was like, I had no idea that was a thing. So it took a lot of proposals to be sent in order to get an invitation, but that's, part of something you have to undertake, right? And what I found consistently was, if I was invited by a library program director, they had a direct personal reason for inviting me. They had MS. Someone they know had a chronic illness. Maybe they got benefits, or someone they know got benefits off of medical cannabis. And that was really the opening there. And I consider, now that I see what libraries are, they are a public resource center. So a person could be like, I don't have internet at my house, or I don't have a computer at my house. I need to research something for a job. And it's just like a hub where you can go to build relationships and socialize and learn. So just like, do you see how, like, as I describe it like that, it sounds like this magical place, right? And it really, really is.
Well, I always believe libraries, however simple looking, are the most magical places. And one thing about this world is you can do all that stuff at home, but most people don't know how to. You need somebody to help you in that, and then you can go home and do it. But the process of research, which is simple to the likes of you and me, is rocket science to others. But once explained, it opens a whole world of education and knowledge to them.
And if you were to be so unfortunate as to be cut off from technology, even for a year, you would feel like, oh no, there's no way for me to ever catch up.
Exactly.
So libraries, they are a fiefdom.
Yes.
So I feel like each library has its own walls around it, and they're like, we do what we want. And I just felt so lucky to be able to say I have been paid by the government to educate about cannabis. So like, it's got that little wink and a nudge to it, where it's like, I did this thing and I made my way where there was no way. And I really would love to have multiplied my efforts with all those people at Illinois Women in Cannabis. But the idea of stepping outside those bounds was a little bit overwhelming for their ability to do administration for it. So I feel like that is a situation and experience that could be multiplied over decades and everywhere in the world, because there are people wanting to educate, and they're having to create a personality, constantly create content, constantly be online. And it's so funny that with all this insane stuff that I have done, I would like nothing more than to be left alone, to have my own thoughts and be more observational. So I'm really out there doing kind of that extroverted introvert.
we haven't got long to run, and I've already used up all your time talking about education, which is great for me because that's the topic I wanted to get you on. What are you doing now with your business, and as a medical cannabis user in Spain, but as a foreign citizen, what's your experience? Because that's a conversation I've not had with anybody either.
Okay, great. I'm going to whip through this because you're going to love how phenomenal my product is. So this is a vast experience. I went to Colorado when they legalized for adult use to do research. That's how I discovered vaping. And after you have a cartridge, you're like, wow, this is sophisticated, clean, discreet, so easy. But you have to keep those cartridges upright so the oil flows down toward the heating element and doesn't get lost, leak, clog, or break. And I feel like I discovered this 10 years ago and had been now teaching myself 3D design to solve that problem. And as I did that, all of the vapes went from being a regular cylinder that would go inside this flexible circle that holds anything between 9 and 13 millimeters to all these slim, super cool and or bulky devices. So I have been working originally in 3D design and 3D printing, and flexible filament is a little bit more of an advanced, getting less advanced now as technology moves forward. But I was able to work through the engineering and figure out a way to attach this. No matter where you put it, it stays upright. There, I can't get you on camera. And that way,
this is audio only, so people will have to imagine. Upright. But they'll see pictures on the website, so they'll know exactly.
Okay, good. And what this is it's about a 2-inch by 2-inch square platform on which there are 2 holders, and the platform is puzzle shaped. And this is what I have had injection molded now and have sold, about 20,000 of these to various companies who want to have their branding on it. So I put their logo on this puzzle piece. It holds a great variety of different accessories and vapes. It keeps it vertical, so it's always in the perfect position for peak performance, never lost, leaking, clogged, or broken. So that's VapeNprop.
And I presume the plastic you'll be using in the future will be a hemp-based plastic.
Of course, absolutely. As soon as it becomes financially feasible, and really all of this technology is coming together all at the same time. Definitely a dream of mine. And that definitely, you want to have that carbon footprint acknowledged. And that's just because we're all super conscious. And now I'm again showing to the camera, which you can't see, this amazing clip that holds a joint in a cylinder that's convex on the inside. So that way a cone slips into it snugly, firmly, without damaging it. And then it has an exterior clip on that tube, so you can hook it to a sunglasses stem.
That looks like a perfect b-boy fashion accessory to me.
Listen, I'm into my VapeNprop, but with all of the research and focus groups and out there in the community doing vending and exhibiting, a lot of people keep joints behind their ear, which I didn't realize that. But when they see this GripNclip, they laugh and elbow each other. It really makes a hot first impression. And when you have this joint on your hat, Bill, it's like an air freshener because you can smell the terps coming off your J the whole time. And so it's really like got its own panache with the GripNclip. And I have a couple other products that are in development, but I want to run my business and scale it in a way that it comes on fast but manageable, whereas I don't want to add, I want to wait then until I'm in a truly profitable situation. So that's my promo merch and I also do custom
and there'll
designs.
be pictures on the website as well, so you can see.
Okay, great. It's not the reason that I evolved to just putting a logo onto the puzzle piece is because when I do 3D design and incorporate a logo into the base of the accessory holder, the clip, it takes a long time for those companies to have enough meetings to decide and authorize an injection mold and get a minimum of 5,000 pieces to keep it financially feasible. I can do a 1-color custom design for about $1 each if you order 5,000. So the idea behind this promo merch is, hey, flower and lighters go together beautifully. But when you really analyze the market, you can see that vaping keeps increasing every year, and you don't want to leave your vapors out in the cold, and you can't just hand them a lighter and expect that to have the promotional merch impact of relationship and attention that you get from something that's always in front of someone, keeping and caring for their very favorite. I call it protecting your peace and protecting your piece. The two different pieces, the cool piece with the peace sign, and then your piece being your accessory. So that is what I'm doing now. And yes, I would love to expand into the EU over here. They're a little bit, let's say 10 years behind here, I'd say, with the potential to catch up very quickly as things are rolling out in Europe. And I have a couple of, I've been to maybe 5 or 6 cannabis social clubs here in Spain. I felt that they were very low key to what we have in the United States, where in the United States, they're much more on top of, hey, let's brand, let's engage with the community, let's be out there and really be having events and experiential situations. I felt like the cannabis social clubs are like, hey, we're low key.
Yeah, well, it's a very European. You'll get used to it. It's a very European, the Brits are the same. We don't think we're European, but we're exactly the same approach. Look, Kirsten, I'd love to carry on talking, but I'm down to the last 90 seconds. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for being on the Karma Koala podcast and specifically talking about education in such great detail. I will include a couple of pictures of your products on the website page. And great to have you on. Thank you for finding the Karma Koala podcast.
Delighted that you would take the time to meet with me. Thanks, Sean. It was great hanging out with you.
Live and direct, live and I take no jive.
Legalize it. So how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, great, Barry, a reefer.